Hi. What Latinidad means to me is it means that I actually get to be my whole self. This something I never always was able to do growing up. I grew in a very community that did not have a lot of Latinos in the community. I think there was two families in my entire community, but I always found relief and comfort and community when I would go be with my family and my cousins, and I have many of them, and just felt really comfortable in those spaces. And as I've grown older, um, Latinidad means I get to be my whole self in every space, and I actually claim it now, and it's pretty exciting, and I think it's a good role model for my children and my nieces and my nephews and the scholars in my community.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Dr. Christina Kishimoto, and you are under the flamboyant with us today. I have a great guest with us. It is Doctora Consi Pedroza from Tukwila Public Schools. If you don't know where Tukwila Public Schools is, it is in the great state of Washington in the Pacific Northwest. So, welcome, Doctora.
Thank you.
I love these opportunities to talk to great leaders across the nation. You and I happen to live in the same state, so that's a lot
Mhm.
of fun. And we know each other in a lot of spaces. In fact, I saw you this summer when you presented at When Women Lead, and you did a great session on governance, which is a topic that we don't talk about much, but I love. You did a nice job.
Thank you. Thank you. It was really fun to co-present with my president of the board.
So, how is the school year going? We are in October, and it's like fast and furious once the school year starts. It feels like it's been, a year already. There's so much going on. How's it going in Tukwila?
It's been wonderful. We've had a really good, strong start. In fact, I've been sharing this in every space that I have. We had a great summer with our students. We offered summer school a triple number of the students we've had in the previous years. We offered tutoring for some of our community events and resources for students in August, and then we just really operationally focused on getting things ready for our scholars, all of our scholars to come in and be ready to start. And we maybe it's because my third year, I don't know, but we had an operations meeting and my team was sitting here going, it's so smooth, like we're waiting. And so it was a wonderful start, and our scholars have shown up happy, and we greeted students at the first day with buses. It was great. It's just been a really wonderful summer and a really wonderful fall.
Oh, that's fantastic news, considering how bizarre the world around us
Yes.
is today. But I do think that when you're leading in a school district, it's about your community, your families, the
Yeah.
kids, the employees, these amazing teachers. And so, there's just a special space that you're leading in. But there is this broader context, right? In
Yes.
fact, at this time of year, I love to do summaries of the big policy issues that are impacting school
Yes.
systems. And quite frankly, I don't know how to do a summary these days. It is hard to really pinpoint what our big policy issues are, and yet our schools are being impacted, right? Our school systems are
Yes.
being impacted.
Yes. Yeah, I'll just add to that I think last year, when a lot of the national landscape changes were occurring and the policy and procedural changes were occurring, we started work right away in the fall, making sure that we had community input and reviewing all of our policies that impact students and families. And so we did that huge review, and we actually had to create actually new systems to support our families and students. And I think that we were ready. And so, what a lot of my summer and fall was just reminding everybody and reinforcing what we committed to last year, and just keeping that. So, I think that is why we've actually also had a strong start, because we just deepened everyone's understanding of what we stand for as a community. And then the next piece about the budget part, we've already been working on making cuts and being really frugal in the hardest decisions around making sure furthest away from scholars. That was the most important value. And so we were conservative. When we heard about the cuts coming or some changes to how things were going to be allocated, my team was very conservative. And I think when some decisions were made that were really impactful to communities, we didn't feel them as bad because we had made some decisions that I think were key, so that we weren't as impacted. Like I said, everything was about keeping things away from the scholars as much as we could. And so we're now in a better place because we got some apportionment back, but now we get to make decisions where that goes and to fill in some of the gaps. So, yeah, and it's hard because a lot of people maybe not were as in that position, and so we're just all of us, the superintendents, at least in my great area, are all working together and collaborating together to make sure that we're supporting each other every step of the way.
I love watching your leadership. You're very connected and intentional,
Yeah.
and in your public conversations, we can see that intentionality in how you lead. And I do think you have this collegial relationship with superintendents around you working together to make the best decisions in the context that we don't always have control of. And
Yes.
finances has been one very difficult kind of condition that all of you have had to make decisions around. On the positive side, and certainly a lot of what you're doing is extremely positive and wonderful, is that this is Hispanic Heritage
Yes.
Month,
Yes.
and we are halfway through it. It runs from mid-September to mid-October, which sometimes confuses people, but
Yeah.
we like to celebrate, Hispanic heritage and Latinidad all year round, right? Because we can't, put that on a shelf. That's who we are. And what's amazing is that Hispanic heritage is about the history and culture of 21 different nations. And so it's very diverse. It's about lots of different people. But at the same time, we are in a time period that's very strange. A lot of our Hispanics are the subject of raids,
Yes.
and we have people being removed who are part of the economic infrastructure of this nation. And so it's really like confusing to be celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month in light of what's happening nationally. And so I think rather than kind of going down that rabbit hole of the complexity of these times, how do you celebrate and think about your Hispanic heritage and how your upbringing and that heritage really forms how you lead today?
Yeah, so I have two very different parent experiences around some of this. I have both my parents were migrant workers, and they marched during the time of Cesar Chavez, right? So I've heard stories about resiliency and actually modeling how it is that we sort of respond and fight back, and not fight back physically. I'm talking about with strategy, peaceful protests, raising our voices. And so I've heard stories over and over again from my family, right? When, they've ridden a bus and they had to be segregated or things that have happened to them. But every time my parents have shared this story, they always share a moment of hope around that.
Mm.
So, for example, when my parents didn't have any money, right? And my dad said, out of the blue, a guy came up to him and offered him a job, like just at the grocery store. And so, always about people, right? Like my parents have always talked about their struggles honestly with me, but also very honestly about how it's been people, right? And all types of people who have supported them or given them opportunities or removed barriers, but also themselves. Like they also were not just sitting back and letting life happen to them. They modeled resiliency and just that notion of like, no, be proud of who you are every step of the way. We are hardworking people. We are a community. We're family, right? And so, and my parents both really drilled in me and my brothers and sisters, and probably my cousins as well. All my cousins, just my aunts, my tios and tias, always like, we are proud. We're just a really strong family unit, and we rely on each other. But we actually stand tall and proud. So I think that fire is in me a little bit, maybe more than maybe a lot. So what I try to do when I think about this is, one, I think it's important that people share their stories, right? So I actually try to be very honest and vulnerable with my staff around experiences I've had. that maybe they never thought about. So and that's hard because I also I'm in a position. And so I always want to be mindful at, as I share stories, and I want to make sure that I'm not, over preaching, or I just let the story tell what's actually happening. But I think it's important because you're right. We have so many different cultures in our community, especially in my community. I have many different Latino cultures here. And so I've asked for everyone to share their stories. And so we're going to publish them because I think it's important for our students to hear from the adults, but we also want to hear from our students as well. So I've done this call out for people to share their stories with us. I modeled it, and I wanted people to share with us examples of, because they've had hardships too, but they've actually also modeled resiliency. And I think and then what does this actually mean to them? And I think that helps us. One of our strategic plan goals is relationships. And so I think that helps us build relationships and build community along the way. So many of my students come from community-centered cultures. And so we're trying to use community and the stories of our scholars and our staff to make sure that we just get to know each other at a deeper level and understand each other. So for me, it's about celebrating the honesty of the struggle, but also how we bring hope in alignment with that. So that's what I try to show in everything. And then the last thing I always try to do is make sure that whatever people think about this group or this group or this group, my responsibility is to give them the highest academic support and wellness support and belonging support, and to remove the barriers that I think of people who remove barriers or provided opportunities to my family and my parents. And so I'm now in a position where I can do that for others. And so that's what I always try to think through. It's not just about sharing the stories, but then how do I back this up with opportunities so our students can show the world, right, how amazing they are. So I that's how I think about Hispanic Heritage Month is it's just that whole circle, right? And then just keep building from there. And so, but centering community definitely in our values here and relationships, and really thinking about belonging and what does belonging mean, to a community like mine where there's so many different cultures, and we all know, that our students have a lot of identities within them as well. So how do we honor all their identities in our community? But I think Hispanic Heritage Month is an opportunity to show the world we're more than what you think, right? And so, yeah, that's I just it's really a great month for me because I get to highlight that, but I also try to make sure it's not a month and it's not a day, and that we talk about it all the time, and always show the brilliance of our students and scholars at any chance we get.
I love that line you use, we're more than what you think. I think all of our young people would say that about themselves.
Yeah,
And so the celebration of Heritage Month or History Months, it's such a great time to see the diversity in these labels that we use, whether it's
yeah,
Latinidad or Hispanics, or when we look at other Heritage Month, Black History Month, or Pacific Islanders or Asians. These are broad categories. Just in Hispanic Heritage Month, we are looking at the history and culture, the contributions of people from 21 different nations. And I think a lot of times that's glossed over. So we're talking from everyone from Spain to Mexico, which is our largest Hispanic group, to the those islanders like Puerto Ricanos, Boricuas, the Dominicanos. And then we have Equatorial Guinea in Africa, which most people I don't hear talk about and don't know that history, where they were a Spanish colony up until the late 1960s. And Spanish is one of their spoken languages, one of their official languages. So we don't think about Africa, the continent of Africa, having a nation within it that has the Spanish language, and there is one just around the equator on the east side of the continent. And so we have these incredible histories. And so the point that you made about kind of asking for people to tell their stories is a great way to stop and go beyond whatever our understanding of Hispanic heritage is to understand these different stories. I love that you're doing that.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, we're excited to share the story. We're slowly sharing all the stories now. And so, and it's funny because I'm learning a lot about the staff that have volunteered to share. I'm like, wow, I didn't know that about you. So it's learning for me as well. And I get to know people on a different level. So it's been exciting.
So what are some things that kids are saying or that you're hearing from students? How are they thinking about? Do you have a sense of what they're thinking about Hispanic Heritage Month and how they're receiving it?
Yeah, I think, well, our students, especially here, so we have a student advisory board group that actually wrote a statement of to all of our teachers, and actually they presented at our all staff kickoff and shared with the staff, what they hope for in terms of cultural responsiveness. So our students have been very, very vocal with our staff, all our staff. Can you imagine a group of students sharing their recommendations to
I love it.
educators about how they want to be seen and how they want to be instructed and how they want to have focus on their well-being? It was really powerful. But cultural responsiveness has, and actually them, and they also talked about having staff that look like them and represent them, right? So they've been very, very vocal about what it is that they want to see in terms of supporting them as individuals. And so they very much, embrace anything around understanding cultures. And so we have a lot of representation, especially in our high school. They've done a really good job of expressing these things and learning about each other. And so they have representation throughout their community. We are a largely diverse. We're about, I think, 80% diversity, and I think that brings its own uniqueness and challenges, right? Because there's so many different cultures and language, and so, but I think our schools have done a really good job in making sure that everyone is welcome and seen and valued, and our scholars keep, as they change, they keep letting us know, how we should be, thinking about them and their identities, right? We think about a lot about, we have multiracial students, right? A lot of multiracial students, and what does that mean for them? And so we have those conversations all the time. And but about Hispanic Heritage Month, our students, they celebrate, and they want they want to celebrate themselves as well, right? So I think about a time when a young student said, when we were talking about what does excellence mean to you, and a student said, I'm excellence,
I
right?
love that.
Yeah, it was great. And that's a good reminder to me all the time. Like when we talk about excellence outside of like this role model or this role model, yeah, that's important. But the students also saying, but I'm also excellence, right? So how do we take their voices and their experiences into this? So and that's why we've asked students to share their stories too, because I think it's important that we know what it means to them. And and I think also especially now, hearing,
Yeah.
knowing that we are proud of them and they're proud of themselves and they offer so much. I think it's critical even now that we actually hear all of these voices and stories, and really deeply listen and learn.
Well, I think our students certainly keep it real for us, don't they?
Yes, they do.
And that's what's
Yes.
wonderful about working in education. It keeps us all really young because our young people have these new perspectives they bring. And, each generation, I think, it just has this capability of embracing these concepts of community in ways that push us as adults. And you're speaking to that. You know how much I love kind of being couched in stories because
Yeah.
there are assumptions we also make about one another and what information I have of you and you have of me, and assumptions we make of each other. And as we get deeper into our stories, we're like, wow, like I didn't know that about your family, your history, where you've been, and the ways in which you have kind of developed your mindset. And that's why you lead that way, right? And that's pretty powerful. We have a lot of women who are aspiring to the superintendency. And I usually ask in these conversations, what's your advice for them? I think I want to ask you a closing question that's a little broader and really focus on all leaders in the superintendent seat
Yeah.
right now and your advice to them about how to lead through the conflict, these conflicting times between this amazing opportunity of this diverse nation that we are with these beautiful, amazing stories and these policy constructs that really are contradicting the celebration of all of who we are. What's your advice to leaders leading today?
So I think number one, don't do it alone. I did not. I have one perspective. And the first thing that I did was I created a committee early on with community members, educators, staff, and board members, one or two board members, because we needed to really understand like what the work was and what is it that we were really being challenged to do. And back then we didn't even know what we didn't know, right? But we had some thoughts and opinions. So that's one, don't do it alone. I think, and I also relied on my superintendent colleagues because we would get together, and many of us actually, there's four of us in my region, five, I believe, who are Latinos, right? And so we would actually talk to offline about, okay, how do we show up in our bigger group spaces, and how do we support them as well, and how do we be supported? Because honestly, some of this work is triggering to us individually as well, right? Because our identities are intertwined in some of these big decisions that are happening around us. And so I think that's the number one thing, is don't do it alone. And the second thing, I go back to the learning, right? Um, Policies. Review your policies. Make sure that, and your procedures, make sure that you are living your values and making sure that your values actually are out. We have to follow the law, but there's also ways we can support our families within our own values, right? And how does that look, and what does that look like? I had to spend a lot of time reminding people that, for example, when outsiders show up at our doors, that includes CPS, the police, right? Like all of these things, like what do we do in all of these? They're the same. So we need to make sure that we're treating everyone the same. And so, but make sure that all of our schools understand and are really clear what that looks like and why. And so I think those are the things, is really leaning on your current procedures, making sure that they're clear. Because I think a lot of times we assume that the schools know what to do, but sometimes they don't, and especially in a crisis, right? So making sure
Right.
that that's really clear and practice and visible, and also that the schools know who they can call if they're in a situation where they're really struggling. So I think it's about, for anybody that wants to be a superintendent or is leading this work, they've got to think about all the layers, right? So it's not just policy, but really the procedural pieces and making sure they're all lined up. And then the last part is making sure we're very visible and transparent and clear about what our values and expectations are. And then I like, the last thing I will say is always be flexible, especially now. We have to be flexible and we have to be adaptive. But we don't have to, like I said, going back to the first thing, but we don't have to go it alone. And so I'd say those are my big three pieces of advice for anyone doing. I've been in the this is my entering my third year. I've had so many crises thrown at me, budget, on and on and on. And I think I've used those three practices pretty consistently throughout all whatever came in front of me. We had a flood in one of my buildings, all of those things. And now we're dealing with other policy changes and budget, budget shifts. And so I think I've applied those three strategies. And has it been perfect? No. That's where the adaptability and the flexibility
That's
comes
right.
in,
That's
so
right.
that you can quickly shift or lean on other changes or rely on your team. And I think that one thing is leaning back to, when we think about COVID, which was, by the way, was just 5 years ago. School districts were able to do things much faster than they ever had in the past. And I think that maybe has prepared us for this moment in time. We are more flexible than we've ever been, and I think we need to all those lessons we learned 5 years ago. We need to bring them into this space now.
Thank you, Doctora Pedroza. I appreciate the time with you, my dear colleague and friends. I appreciate your leadership here in the great state of Washington, but also
Thank you.
your national voice as well and your willingness to engage. You've shared some wise words. I think I would be remiss if I don't mention kind of a personal perspective that I feel that our nation's schools have got to go back to being safe spaces
Yes,
free from violence of any type,
absolutely.
certainly spaces where young people and children and our teachers and staff can come and be in the safest place in their community should be
Yep.
the school system. So
Yep.
thank you for this conversation today, Concie. I
Thank
also
you.
want to remind our participants who are with us today, our audience, that our session proposals for When Women Lead 2026 in Vancouver, Washington, June 2026, is now open on our website, voiceforequity.com. And we hope that superintendents from across the nation will come and present and be part of this important policy conversation together. So thank you, Concie, for being with
Thank
us.
you.
You're an amazing person.
Oh, thank you. You too. I'm just honored to know you.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks.